When you hear the names Latin America and Central and Eastern Europe, what comes to mind? Probably nothing, right? It's just not that common to know much about the relationship between these two. What similarities do they have? What differences? So today we're going to talk about 5 incredible differences between Latin America and Central and Eastern Europe. Boom! Cześć ludzie! What's up people? Hola, VIGO'S dad here. Welcome to another episode. Today we're gonna talk about something that's quite interesting to me. First of all, because one of them I am Latin American, and the other one is something I'm getting to know more and more. As the years go by, I get more, in touch with the Central and Eastern European culture.
Yes, I learned my lesson. I gotta say Central Europe, and I have to differentiate that with Eastern Europe because it's not the same. I get it.
But before we get to the differences, let's learn a little bit about some interesting facts about each of them. Let's start with Latin America. Latin America is a group of countries and dependencies that is located in the Western Hemisphere. There are a total of 33 that comprise it. Also remember what I mentioned on another episode. Every time you talk about Latin America, you must include the Caribbean. It's Latin America and the Caribbean. And there are 15 dependencies. These are states like Puerto Rico, like the Falkland Islands, like the British Virgin Islands, and so on and so forth. With the arrival of the Spaniards and the Portuguese, the indigenous elites, such as the Incas and the Aztecs, were co-opted or deposed, hence the reason why there is such a heavy Spanish influence in our cultures. Now, how about Central and Eastern Europe? And by the way, for you guys that are not European, what is this Central and Eastern Europe? Most of us learn that it's, Western Europe and then it's Eastern Europe. But believe me guys, don't go there. It's a thing. The ones in the center want to be called the left, the ones on the left want to be called the center. It's a whole thing. What we all know is not the West. So what am I talking here? What is the distinction? So Central and Eastern Europe is the region of Europe that is between Western Europe and Asia. There is no consistent definition of the precise area that it covers, partly because the term has a wide range of geopolitical, cultural, geographical, ethnic, cultural, socioeconomic connotation. Some people believe that you just have, East and West, just as you have North and South. But make no mistake, if you tell someone from Poland or from Czechia or maybe Slovakia, if they belong to Eastern Europe, they'll probably call you on it. They'll tell you that they belong to Central Europe. And you know what, I get it. In the States, for example, you have the East Coast, you have the West Coast, and you also have the Midwest, which is kind of like Central US, no? So with this complexity, the term CEE is born, which stands for Central Eastern Europe. It encompasses the countries in Central Europe, the Baltics, Eastern Europe, and Southern Europe, which is the Balkans. And without further ado, let's go for the 5 differences. Latin American countries are defined as developing economies, and most countries there are battling high poverty index. There has been significant improvements though. For example, between the year 1999 to the year 2010, poverty dropped from around a staggering 43% to a 31%. That's almost a 10% drop, which is quite significant honestly. Still, these are quite challenging moments for Latin America. Just recently, with the increasing recession, especially after COVID, the total number of poor people rose to 209 million, which is 22 million more than the previous year in 2019. But one thing that defines Latin America quite well is disparity. We also have big economies there, such as Brazil, Mexico, Argentina. For example, in the year 2020, Brazil occupied the number 14th biggest economy in the world. Still, the overall conclusion, sadly, is that Latin America and the Caribbean is a struggling region. But how about Central and Eastern Europe? The first thing you might notice is that if you look at a map of Central Europe, you're going to find countries such as Austria, Germany, Liechtenstein. And although it is correct, they are part of Central Europe, we are gonna exclude them from this video because they are more politically and economically linked to Western Europe. Before communism, most of these countries were pretty Western European, meaning that they were predominantly Catholic, feudal, and often, part of a Western kingdom such as Prussian or the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Then there are countries in the eastern part of the continent, such as Russia, Moldova, Belarus. They fit this Cold War idea of Eastern Europe. Ex-communist, transitory states, predominantly Orthodox Christian. They are not members of the European Union, which unfortunately means that they have less developed economies and lower standards of living. One thing that makes a huge difference between between the regions, Latin America and Central and Eastern Europe, is the European Union, which I just mentioned. Many of the countries there are either members of the Union or, they are candidates to join at some point, which grants them significant advantages. Let's make a quick comparison by choosing two of the poorest countries of each region. We have Bolivia in Latin America and we have Bulgaria. Bulgaria, for instance, enjoys one of the strongest passports in the world. Also, there's more respect for human rights because it's being observed and monitored by European Union, whereas most Bolivians cannot say the same thing. They don't enjoy the same benefits, and sadly, that is a very big distinction. The European Union makes a big difference. Even non-European Union countries like Albania, which ranks pretty low globally, enjoys constant surveillance and funding from European Union countries. Despite, the high crime rates there, it is constantly monitored and dealt with within Europe. And a country like Colombia, unfortunately, faces, more violent crimes and it's politically more isolated. In Latin America, we have a healthy amount of foreigners and tourists, especially in countries like Mexico or the Dominican Republic, where we have tourism-based economy. So it's not uncommon to see foreigners walking about and exploring the cities, but it's nothing compared to the amount of tourists and foreigners that live and visit cities like London, like Paris, like Berlin. And even though these cities belong to countries in Western Europe, the spillover to cities like Prague, like Krakow, like Budapest is incredible. But when I mention foreigners, I'm not talking about numbers. I want to focus on the relationship that those foreigners have with the locals. In Latin America and the Caribbean, foreigners are treated like royalty. If you've been there, if you've spent enough time there, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that they will not try to squeeze a few more dollars out of you that they should. Of course, it's common, but still, the treatment is quite different if you're a foreigner. There's even a very famous social term used in Dominican Republic called Complejo de Guacanagarix, which basically means that a foreigner will probably have preferential treatment over the locals. And this dates to when Christopher Columbus discovered the Hispaniola island in 1492. There was one of the 5 chiefs of the Taínos, it was Guacanagarix, and he was the one that welcomed Christopher Columbus when they, arrived to the island. And he basically gave the island to him, and it led to, of course, Spaniards massacring all the Taínos, and history, was written. By the way, if you want me to make an episode about the history of the Dominican Republic and colonization and all those things, drop a comment below and see if you want to see that. So yeah, basically, the more exotic the place you come from, the more you're gonna be treated as if you belong to the royal family. It's a little bit sad, to be honest, because of course there's a meaning behind it. Most people think that you are well off. They don't know exactly, they don't know how to read you socially, so they think that you might help them. So it's quite common for countries that have a lot of poverty, but it is true. Although this is not the only reason. In Latin America, although most of us are, very racially mixed, it's still not that common to see many foreigners from different parts of the world looking completely different. If you go to San Cristobal in Dominican Republic, you're not gonna find a Polish person and a Czech person and a German and then someone from South Africa. It's just not gonna happen. Whereas in Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, you're gonna have a little bit more diversity, so you're gonna have people from different parts of the world. I remember visiting some Central and Eastern European countries and feeling, not mistreated, because I was never mistreated, but for sure I didn't feel that being a foreigner was a plus like it would happen in Latin America. Sometimes it would even feel as if I was bothering the locals a little bit by not knowing, the culture, by not knowing the norms, and that was a very big difference for me. Okay, so foreigners are maybe not treated as well in Central and Eastern Europe, but friendships, that's a completely different thing. It might be a little bit hard to befriend an Eastern European, but once that friendship is established and it's locked in, believe me, you really have a friend and you can count on them. Latinos, we're fun, full of joy, happy, and we will make you feel after just one night of, hanging out that we are buddies, that we are friends. But make no mistake, there might be some fluff in there. Don't call me tomorrow after the party saying, "Hey man, how you doing? Hey listen, can you give me a ride to the airport?" What? Does he think we're buddies now or something? What the heck? Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But there is some truth to that. Latinos are reality-bending beings. It's not that we are lying or that we are sneaky, but we don't necessarily associate being nice with friendship. The way we understand and view friendship is a little bit less intense, less attached, and less dependable. Ask any European and they will tell you that Latinos are very, very difficult people to understand and to really try to see what we're all about. Now, does that mean that Latinos are not good friends? Does it mean that we are not dependable, that we cannot lend a hand when you need it? Hell no! Not at all. There are many Latinos that are really, really good friends that will, have your back whenever you need them. They just have to check their schedule first. Hey, my Latinos, I am obviously kidding. I know many of you are amazing friends, so I am joking a little bit. Don't kill me. What is the definition of trust? A firm belief in the reliability or truth. This is one of the biggest differences between these two groups. Central and Eastern Europeans are among the most distrustful people on the planet. They don't trust authority, they don't trust their neighbor, they don't even trust technology.
Everybody lies.
And there's a reason for this. History hasn't been kind to them. After World War II, we know what happened. A lot of shady behavior by the authorities, by politicians. So there is a huge social scar in regards to trust. In Latin America, for whatever reason, there seems to be an inexplicable tendency to believe in someone's honesty and sincerity. And don't get me wrong, we know that there are dishonest people out there, but I have never experienced a level of distrust as high as I did when I, first came to Europe, especially as I started visiting Central Eastern Europe.
Trust nobody.
And I must say, it's not such a bad thing. You have to earn the trust. You have to prove to people that you are who you say you are and that your words are honest and that they mean something. And one thing I believe has a direct correlation with this trust thing is education. In Central and Eastern Europe, people have free education. They have access to learn about their history, about their past. Whereas in Latin America, it's not the case. Most people there are uneducated, and it leaves a wider opening for them to be deceived. The American continent was discovered in the year 1492 by Christopher Columbus, and it was precisely in La Española, which is the island that the Dominican Republic shares with Haiti, where Christopher Columbus first encountered land. And we have a rich history, and it's quite old, but it pales in comparison with the history of Europe, and especially Central and Eastern Europe. Of course, there was history before the Spanish people came into the island, but there's not that much recorded history, and anthropologists and historians have been able to decipher some of the things that were happening before with all the indigenous tribes and such. But compared to all the things that had already taken place in Europe by the year 1492, well, I think it makes a huge difference, and it also defines the character of the people living there. So when you think about Latinos, when you think about Latin America and the Caribbean, of course, you can only go back so much before you're able to form an opinion on who we are and what we are. But when you think about Eastern Europe, Central Europe, therefore the fact that you have to distinguish Central Europe from Eastern Europe tells you that there is a significant difference in the history of these people. And I believe that this is one of the biggest differences. I will hopefully make a video in the future about similarities between these two groups, and I also believe that we have a lot of things in common, but I believe history is one of the major differences that we have. Boom! That's all, guys. That's the end of the episode. I hope you liked it. I really enjoyed this episode, although it was very hard, I have to admit, because I had to do some research, which I always do, but I wanted to portray some differences that were not that common or not so obvious. Drop me a comment below if you have any more differences that you think are important. Maybe we can do a part 2 of this. Maybe we can do a video about the similarities between Central Eastern Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean. Give me a thumbs up, share it with someone, and see you next week. Bye bye.